Hello, and welcome to Balance and Bottom Lines with Rebecca. Today's episode is focused on trauma and the impact on your health. Joining us today is Miranda Summer. Miranda is the creator and owner of Reset with Miranda, a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner with a background in education, professional photography, network marketing, graphic design, and previous praise and worship leader. Welcome, Miranda.
Hello, it's so nice to be here. What an honor. Thank you so much.
I am truly thankful that our paths crossed, and I'm honored to have Miranda on today. I know that our conversation is going to help so many listeners. When I met Miranda, I was truly impressed. I've worked with and know many health coaches, and her approach is far different. She doesn't start out with testing. She works to help you find the root cause of health issues you might be experiencing. She does this by creating a safe space for her clients to open up about life experiences and trauma they might have experienced. Miranda has experienced some trauma of her own and has personal experience with why this approach works. Miranda, if you don't mind sharing your journey and why you are so passionate about helping others.
Oh my gosh, I'd be blessed to share the journey. And I will say that the journey, there's many stories within the story. And so I'll try to keep an overarching view of the big picture. Because there is lots of kind of trauma or stressful points in that are very pivotal. But the overarching idea is that so a lot of people come to my program, and my main story people kind of associate with me as weight loss. So I've lost over 100 pounds, but that journey started long, long ago when I started dieting, and I was aware that I was a kid that was, chubby and overweight. And so I tried all of those things, like as young as like 7 or 8. I remember like counting the calories of my Cocoa Puffs and my Pop Tarts and all that stuff, and doing all the diets. I did the Jane Fonda thing with my mom and wore the leg warmers and the whole thing, and everything from P90X to, everything. I've been there, done that. And so that it turned into kind of an obsession. It turned me into an overachiever in like every other area, whether it was school or sports or music. I could, those things kind of came easy to me, it seemed. But like trying to lose weight or be thin at the time, which just seemed like the one thing that I couldn't do. So to kind of overcompensate, I realized that my perfectionism, I know many people can relate to those qualities, kind of comes from just kind of feeling shame about my body image and being overweight. And if I look back now, I didn't when I was little, I wasn't as overweight as I felt that I was, but that pattern and that negative reel in my mind, created that yo-yo pattern throughout my life. And so getting to high school, college, and adult life, that continued to yo-yo. I've done every diet known to man, whether it was Weight Watchers, Nutrisystem, every exercise plan. And I'm a very motivated and self-driven person. And so being able to lose a little and then like gain it back times two was extremely frustrating because I knew that I was smart, I knew that I was driven, and I knew that I was trying. And that kind of spiraled into my early 30s. Like I said, I went to school. I went to school to become a teacher. That the thing that I wanted most was a family and children, and that's why I went to school to become a teacher. But through my life and getting married, I was kind of put in positions where I had to give up my career, or kind of transform or move around the country in order to kind of do what was best in order to get the family, right? And so at one point, we had moved to Florida, and that's where I did professional photography, and that's where that part comes into the story. But during that time, I was working two jobs. I was both a teacher and a photographer, and health, although trying to take care of it, started to spiral out of control. So that's where I yo-yoed myself and overworked myself into over 100 pounds heavier than I am today. And in another instance, we had to move again. So picking up and starting over, we're going to note that as a trauma in your life when you have to be disconnected or you work towards something and something comes to an end. There's a loss there. We're going to talk about that later. I had several of those throughout my early adult life, and all of this kind of for the quest of, starting a family, getting set in your career to be able to have those children, right? So at this point, I had now sacrificed not only my educational career that I had worked really hard for, but now my professional photography career. And I ended up in Louisville in this area in Southern Indiana. And it's a blessing. But I found myself, kind of harboring that a little bit. And when it came down to starting a family, after 3 years of trying, we basically were told we would have less than 10% chance of conceiving with in vitro. So we did some of the infertility treatments, I forget what it's called, artificial insemination. We did that, didn't work. They basically told me that it wasn't going to work, but I had to try it first. And I knew before I was going to start the in vitro process, which was very expensive and stressful, and just it didn't feel right to like shoot myself up with hormones. There was just always this, thank you God for that intuition that doesn't feel right, that I needed to give it another go. And this was a time in life when The Biggest Loser was super, super popular. And I hadn't tried that yet. So I hadn't tried working out like 4 or 5 hours a day, counting absolutely everything that goes in my body. So I did that. And that worked to the extent where I was able to lose 50 pounds. And then Cooper, you see, if you're on the video, can see behind me, my son, who's now 13 years old, was conceived naturally. So that was a win that showed that just by changing your lifestyle, that your body can kind of get back to doing what it was supposed to do, which is kind of what I was setting out to prove, right? Like that I needed to know that for myself before I went to like a conventional method that didn't seem the right way. Like if we needed to, that's the way we would go. And then through that, like I was kind of convinced I wasn't going to gain that weight back, but I did. Doing the same things that I did to lose the weight, I gained 70 pounds while I was pregnant. And then when Cooper was born, there's kind of some trauma that happened here because this, beautiful baby that I prayed for and all of this work, when he was about 6 weeks old, he stopped eating or would eat very little. And so in the quest to figure out what was wrong with my baby, and I'm a new mom, I don't know what's going on. I'm literally searching everything, going to pediatricians, trying to figure out what's wrong with him. And everybody basically poo-pooed the fact that anything was wrong with him, that he looked fine because he was happy and smiling and he was high on the growth percentiles at that time. So it didn't trigger that anything was wrong, although I literally spent 24 hours a day trying to feed him and figure out what was going on. And so we're going to mark that as another trauma of seeking help in the medical world for my baby. So now it's myself and my baby. And I got kicked out of multiple pediatricians' offices in the area. At one point, he was on double the adult dose of Prevacid, but I knew intrinsically that my baby did not have acid reflux because he wasn't eating and he didn't have those symptoms. He wasn't screaming. He was actually really happy. He just wouldn't eat. And so fast forward through that, and through the grace of God, I was again talking to moms, telling stories, which is why I'm so glad that we're doing this, because stories save lives. It is absolutely 100% what I believe. A mom shared with me that her baby had something similar that was happening, and she took her to a chiropractor. And long story short, with one adjustment, Cooper started eating again. So there's another win and a move towards natural medicine. So if that was what happened with Cooper, then what about me? What about me? What can I learn? And that woman was truly an angel in my life. She's since passed, but she has taught me so much about that. But in that, as I started to really move towards these things that were changing my life. I had to take a look at the fact that my marriage didn't align with what was going on. As I continued to dive into health and my family was super important, I just found that we were just growing apart. The way we were handling these changes was intrinsically at the core different. And it was something that I lived with every single day. Like, this didn't feel right. Like, I'm trying to make it work. But then along comes Emerson 3 years later. And during that pregnancy, I was extremely sick. Now you can mark that I was kind of traumatized during the entire pregnancy because of being fearful of what happened with Cooper, being in a relationship that I wasn't sure that I wanted to be anymore, needed to be anymore. And I literally couldn't eat during that. So I had lost the 70 pounds that I gained with Cooper after that, after he was eating and things like that, got my body back. That's when I started the network marketing and was promoting a health challenge. But I couldn't eat with Emerson. Like, I literally couldn't eat. I only ate like crackers and toast, and I gained that same 70 pounds to the pound on the dot. gained it all back. Thought she'd be better, or thought that I would be better after she was born because it's a girl, my hormones are different, like all the things that they tell you. But not only was I not better, I couldn't sleep. Things grew worse. So I started to work out immediately right after that. Literally 3 days later, I was down in my basement on the elliptical machine trying to exercise because I knew that would make me feel better. I had to feel better. I was desperate to feel better. And at this time, I was seeking lots of integrative physicians, like, what is going on? Like, it's obviously not the pregnancy. There probably was some significant postpartum anxiety and depression that came, and if you want to call it something. But I just used exercise and all the things that I knew before, the kind of over exercising and trying to, eat less, move more. Like that's what's going to work, right? And I ate less and moved more myself into a near heart attack when she was 9 months old. And this is an important trauma because I want to share what happened to me that day because it was really hard for me researching all of these things that I was researching thyroid issues. I was listening to podcasts. I was really diving deep into what is integrative. I wouldn't say that I had found functional medicine yet, but I was down in the rabbit hole. I was seeing lots of different practitioners. I'd already bounced out of so many for the infertility and, Cooper's issues and stuff like that. So I was hunting, like I was a researcher, like I'm a mama on a mission. I'm going to put my money on that like every day of the week. And so at this point, we were getting ready to go on our first vacation to leave these kids. It was literally like the Hail Mary vacation for our marriage, quite honestly. And I was having like blackout migraines at the gym, heart palpitations. I couldn't really sleep. And I was like, I've got to go to the emergency room. I don't feel right. And sure enough, I go in there. They put me on an EKG. My blood pressure's through the roof. They give me a nitroglycerin pill to bring my heart rate down. And sure enough, I find out that I was near a heart attack or a stroke. I actually passed out, threw up. And when the doctor came in the room, I'm scared to death. They hand me a map on how to get to the cardiac unit of the hospital across town. And so the question that I asked was, is it safe for me to get in my car? And I will never forget what happened. And I'm praying for that person because when he looked at me, he said, well, you drove here, didn't you? And we're going to mark that as a trauma too, because having been that scared, I now have these two beautiful children. I have a 9-month-old infant, a 3-year-old toddler, and I'm scared to death that I'm dying and nobody knows what's wrong with me. Spent the whole day in the cardiac unit. And they're running every test. I'm connected to monitors. They've done ultrasounds and all this stuff. They've done blood work. And at the end of the day, at about 5 o'clock, they literally say, okay, well, you're released to go. Everything's fine. And I lost it because I knew everything wasn't fine. I was asking, fine compared to what? What are my electrolytes? What's this? What's that? I was studying all of these things. And they literally said to me, we're sorry, ma'am. If you feel like you need further care, you can go to the emergency room. And I said, I went to the emergency room and I ended up here. What's going to happen different? And when no one gives you an answer and they literally have no questions for you, I knew that it was kind of up to me or me to continue to research this. I did go home with a cardiac monitor that day, but I was leaving on a plane for Florida. Like, what good is this going to do? But that vacation saved my life. I went down there, my body shut me down. So thankfully, being near the ocean, like when you all feel great on vacation, it's because of the natural environment calms your central nervous system. And so thankfully that vacation, I sat on the beach and I slept, that my body shut me down enough that I was down. I was down and I was resting. And for the next 90 days, I was down and I was resting. And I was so far down that I will tell you that I don't remember the first 9 months of my daughter's life. Like that's how bad the brain fog was, how bad the insomnia was. And I'm really thankful that I had the clarity of mind to take videos and pictures of her because I didn't have that. And that's when my life changed. That's when I found the world of functional medicine and I went to an event. A podcast literally saved my life. And the rest, shall we say, is history. There's a lot of stories in there, but just immersed myself in communities got into a mentorship of functional medicine practitioners where not only did I, sharpen my craft and my skills, I was able to continue my own healing journey, which as a practitioner, I feel like I'm always just inviting people into my journey because that journey never ends. We're always working on better. And so about 5.5 years ago is when I developed the reset, which is it was kind of the missing piece for the weight loss to tap into what is healing. And through this journey, kind of when with the infertility is when it switched from losing weight into creating health. And so we really have to look at any symptom, and extra weight is one, where we have to address it at the root cause. And so no matter what symptom we have, a lot of people do carry extra weight like myself, but some people have the opposite problem where they can't put on weight and the root of it is still the same. Which is why, like you mentioned, I don't start with testing. I did all of that. I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on supplements and testing to get to the fact that the big things that needed to change in my life were the things that were related to those traumas, those stresses, whether it's a trauma on the body with food that we put inside or living kind of against my, desires for my life or against who God made me to be. Just realizing that all of those things were stacking up and I wasn't being authentic to myself. And that in of itself was a trauma. And in addition to all of the things that had stacked and all the things we haven't mentioned here yet that have contributed to that. And so we have to remove as many of those as we can. And obviously, we can't remove life happening to us. But when we give the body what it needs, we have more ability to adapt to that. So the reset is truly a program. I know God made me a teacher. I started out as an elementary teacher for over a decade to help to take these things that we love to make super complicated. We like to think that we are uniquely broken. Go look it up. It's a term called terminal uniqueness. We think that nobody can figure us out, like me sitting in that cardiac unit, like nobody's going to figure this out. There's no test to test this. But in reality, we're way more alike than we're different. And our bodies are designed to move away from pain. And those traumas create patterns, and our stress response dictates everything in health and disease and dysfunction. Until we understand what our body's doing, can we really adapt to that or understand the way that it works so that we have motivation for what we're doing. Because when you start to think about your diet as something that is not only fueling your body for the stressors of life, but if we think of foods that are toxic to us as traumas to our body, that changes the way we look at it. I know most of us aren't thinking of the margarita as trauma to the body. Well, your body might think differently about that. So, and learning, that everything is a message to the body and your brain is just trying to take that in to keep you alive. Like everything in your body works together as a whole. Conventional medicine likes to separate these things into endocrinology and you go to the gut health doctor, like everything's separate, but they all need to be talking to each other. And so I'm really passionate. I just feel like my purpose is to educate on the really big picture and let's get the big rocks in place first and support people in those habits, the day-to-day habits. And that takes time. It takes time, it takes practice, it takes education, and it takes you understanding why it's working and proof that it works. So if you're not getting results, you're not going to do it. And so that's kind of what the reset method is, which is a trademark method that I've created inside my program. And then if we need to do testing and stuff like that, we can. But I feel like so much of it is one in just breaking this apart and giving people the space to talk about it because no one's ever acknowledged that for them. No one's ever said, yes, you're absolutely right. That loss that you had, that death that you had, that thing that you went through, the time that you went to your doctor and they told you were fine and you knew that you weren't, that you're validated for that. And so yeah, there's a lot in there. Thank you for letting me share that. Super happy to, go further on any one of those points.
Yes. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, you unpacked a whole lot with that and, all those traumas that you went throughout those years. And, when your little one is not eating, that's terrifying. I mean, that's your baby
Yeah.
and there's obviously something wrong. And the fact that they dismissed you, that's just That's sad. That truly is sad, but it's a blessing that that woman that came into your life and shared that story with you, and, I would have never even thought about a chiropractor, the baby needing an
Mhm.
adjustment. I mean,
Yeah.
how that is really cool,
And I'd
really
love to
cool.
speak to that really quickly for the moms that might be listening to this, because if you have a baby that's colicky, one thing that I realized is Cooper had a broken clavicle when he was born. Now, this is actually something that's very common, is what I found out from my chiropractor, is because I was given Pitocin, so they speed it up, and a lot of times the babies are pulled. You got to be fast, right? We got to get the baby out. Well, in that, their bones are meant, they're more pliable, but a lot of times they break and they do repair. But what had happened is it probably pinched a nerve or something, so that every time he swallowed, it caused him pain. So until his vertebra was back in alignment, he couldn't swallow without pain. And so, the chiropractor noticed that one of his top 2 vertebra was out of alignment, and so if you have a colicky baby or know somebody that's, got a colicky baby, or they won't eat, or they have severe acid reflux, think about finding a chiropractor, because they can put that baby back into alignment that might be causing some issues, that a medication will most likely not address. It's gonna be something like that, mom's diet, like lots of things that are naturally fixable. So I just wanted to put that out there for as a public service announcements for women that are listening, that that was a big lesson learned, like a big one, about, we're put through labor and delivery really quickly. The babies are pulled out and they need adjusted.
Wow, yeah, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. It's
Yeah.
not something I would have thought of, and I had an emergency C-section, so I didn't have that experience, but that's a
Yeah.
really good point. Yeah, great.
Yes.
Thanks
Yes.
for sharing. I do wanna kinda go back too and talk about, you go to the ER, you're looking for help. I mean, that is terrifying, your experience, and, obviously there's something wrong. There's something
Mhm.
off, or you wouldn't be near a heart attack.
Right.
Um, when you came back from vacation after you had that time to kinda decompress, and, you're spending the next 90 days just not doing as much, and you and I are both type A, and my brain tells me, "Keep going, keep pushing." How did you realize, "I've gotta stop, I've gotta take this time to rest?"
Well, I started researching. Well, adrenal fatigue was a really common terminology. You'll probably find that now. And so, truly, it was my good friend, Sarah Fragoso, her podcast, her story. She was, fit. She was running a gym and she was eating paleo and all of those things at the time is what I was listening to. And I heard her story. It sounded just like mine. I was like, okay, so I'm not crazy. And so when I started to learn about these terminologies, like that's how I got into the world of functional medicine. That's why I knew I was going to go back. And so I luckily found a program. Instead of just seeking out practitioners, I was like, well, I'm going to become one, so that I could really learn it, because I needed to learn it. Because God had convicted me at an event that I went to. Actually, I went out to her event. There was an event that I went out there, that I was convicted not only to figure out what was going on with me, but to figure out, how to help other people with it. And so, so not only was I not okay, I found out that I had undiagnosed Hashimoto's, which is autoimmune thyroid. I also had celiac disease. I was extremely insulin resistant, close to type 2 diabetic. So I was eating the keto diet and exercising. So I was not I literally eliminated fruit for 5 years. I counted every carb that went in my body, but I was near type 2 diabetic because your stress response will elevate your blood glucose. It's fascinating. Like, they actually have done a study on Navy SEALs that are, type 2 diabetics, even though they eat an amazing diet, but they have so much internal stress on their body that it can drive their blood glucose up, because your stress response does that. It's supposed to. It elevates your blood glucose. And that's a survival mechanism, which we're not taking a look at. I also had severe anxiety and depression. At one point, I really lost speech. Brain fog was significant for me. Both of my grandparents passed away from Alzheimer's in years, just a couple years prior. So the driven, focused nature that I have that went away, where I feel like I couldn't read a sentence, without like having to read it 3 times, and just becoming like ultra paranoid and fearful for my life, just because people weren't listening to me. They didn't listen to me for my baby. Like, it was extremely traumatic in all of that. And so, but at the underlying root of all of it was stress. Okay. So stress on the body from food, stress on the body from emotional turmoil, a lot of it emotional and trauma to my bodies, a lot of it was. And then I was creating trauma in my body by doing the things that I thought were creating me making me healthy. Like, the under eating and over exercising can become a trauma. So I'm really passionate about that. So I dove into studying something called heart rate variability, which is the measure. So the nerd in me can come out too sometimes. And heart rate variability, which that technology saved my life. It's the measure of your stress response. And so because I had learned to love to work out through all of that, CrossFit 2-a-days that I put myself through, um, I had to kind of earn my workout. I had to use this technology. Now you can use an Aura ring, which I wear religiously every day to track my HRV. That's really the only thing I track. Um, and that told me when my body was recovered or my body was stressed. So I couldn't go work out even though I felt better. Like that would actually send me back down. So I had something to give me a measure of that. And just by going and taking steps towards what was Miranda, authentically Miranda, I went back to church. I started singing. I joined the praise and worship team. Um, Unfortunately, I got a divorce. Like I went into functional medicine. I started a practice from being a stay-at-home mom. Like I made changes. I had to. Like literally, my life depended on it. I felt like I was dying in my early 30s. And, so yeah, so to say that I went all in would be an understatement. It's kind of my personality, but I had to go all in on me and what, God was calling me to in my life. And it's been the biggest blessing with, the way we've been able to pay it forward. Because one of the things that we do in our program is we allow people, it has grown word of mouth. So we've helped over 1,300 people in the past 5.5 years by just them sharing their stories, by people relating to the fact that they relate to something in my story or something in somebody else's story. And that's how you and I met and are ended up here today, right? Just by able to have a conversation and relating in our stories that are so similar.
Yes. Yeah, I was just getting ready to say, adrenal fatigue is very near and dear to my heart. I have battled, I will say, with that for the last several years. I feel like I'm in a much better place, but to kind of go backwards and talk about how I got there. My biological father was never present in my life, mm, and I experienced some abuse from a stepfather. Um,
Mhm.
when I was about 17 years old, he picked me. He was always picking on me from the time he came into my life at about 12 for those roughly 5 years. He would, get me down on the ground and tickle me to the point where I was in tears and just would not stop. He called me fat or chubby as a teen. And as a teen girl, like, I went through those stages of where I wasn't so cute, um,
Mhm.
and so when you're hearing that at home from someone that's supposed to be a role model and stepping in as a father figure, it really impacts you. Um, so that abuse escalated to the point that one weekend he held me up against a wall, grabbed me by the neck, and my feet were dangling off the floor. And it was all over the fact that I had seen a report card that he had. He's an engineer and he prides himself on how smart he is. That was another thing he would always put me down about is that, I'm never going to amount to anything and I don't
Mm.
have good grades and, just all of these things, just anything he could to put me down. And so I saw a report card that was on the table from some boxes they were cleaning out. It was just totally accidental. And he had an F on one of his classes. And one day this weekend, he's this particular one I'm talking about, he is getting on me about a grade I got. And so, of course, being the teen that I am, I'm 17 at the time, I pop off. Like, I'm one
Mhm.
that I'm only going to take so much and I'm going to snap. And he had me to that point where I had to take up for myself because my mom's a tiny woman. There was nobody else to take up for me. There wasn't a father figure. He was that person stepping in.
Mhm.
And so I'd had it. So I said, "Well, I saw your report card and, your grade wasn't any better than mine." And He just came at me and grabbed me by the neck, lifted me up off the ground against the wall, and my feet were dangling. If it wasn't for my mom jumping on his back and him letting go and throwing her, I don't know what would have happened.
Mm,
But it was a terrible, traumatic, obviously, situation. But that abuse for the 5 years that I experienced, it really pushed me. In early adulthood, I feel like I had some potential abandonment issues.
mhm,
I definitely had some control issues,
mm,
not controlling others, but controlling what I put in my body. It led to me having, I was never diagnosed anorexic or bulimic, but I had experienced some times before the anorexia episode started where I would eat something, quote unquote, I shouldn't be eating, and I would purge it. Then I kind of dove into the under eating, the extreme over exercising, um, you know, but honestly, at one point, it just was a very unhealthy, destructive path. And I lived in that path. I was married to a bodybuilder. At one point in my life, I was 96 pounds and I'm 5'5".
mm,
So it was
mm,
extremely underweight. Thankfully, God had given me my son at an early age because after giving birth to him, all of this kind of started where it was the only thing in my life I could control. I couldn't
mhm.
control anything else, but I could
Right.
control all of these things.
Yes.
And, I had 3 miscarriages throughout that time of abusing my body,
Mhm.
because it was what I could control. Um,
Yes.
and it's actually when I sit here and I talk about it, it's really hard to talk about.
Mhm.
It was a very stressful time in my life, and I'm
Yeah.
very disciplined and disciplined to a fault. Even if I'm not feeling like doing something, my butt is
Right.
up and I'm doing it. I'm out there
Yep.
walking. I'm making sure I'm getting my weight training in. I'm gonna hit my macros. Like I'm a disciplined
Mm,
person,
yeah.
through and through, and it's definitely a fault for me. So in 2013, it was probably the toughest year of my life. I lost a job that I had for 13 years. It was a career that I absolutely love. Still the career I'm in, but I lost a 13-year job, and that was super hard because I gave everything to that company, and you
Mhm.
were nothing but a number at that company. But I did extremely well, and when I was there, but it was tough. But truly, it was a blessing that that happened because that place had me so sucked in, and I missed the first 5 years of my son's life when he was young because I was working from sunup to sundown. I didn't realize that at the time because I was so sucked in. But I lost the job in January. My grandmother, well, my basement flooded, and I was divorced at this time in 2013, so I was on my own. My basement floods, my grandma then passes in May. So it was the hardest year of my life, and so mentally, I was not in a good place, and honestly, the next 2.5 years after that was honestly out of control. They were not good years for me. I was in and out of relationship with who is now my husband, my son's father. We share a 20-year-old together. And I'm so blessed that we were able to reconnect and be on a good path with each other and not a
Mhm.
destructive one. But we went through some tough years. And in 2016, I was determined to keep my family together because I didn't have that as a child. So that was another thing that I was dealing with in the back of my head throughout all these years. I've got to put my family unit back together. But ultimately, when all of this started to kind of crack open was 2018. My husband had a brain tumor. Thankfully, it was benign, but it was almost a 10-hour surgery. And during that time, not to make this about myself, but this is my story as far as what happened, because that was definitely traumatic for him. It was traumatic for our
Absolutely.
family. He was 40 at the time. We didn't know, is he going to be okay? Is he still going to be around? My son was traumatized throughout this situation as well. Dad's going into surgery. I don't know what the outcome's going to be. Is he even going to make it through this surgery? So
Mhm.
it was roughly about 10 hours. And during that time, I could feel I could feel my anxiety picking up. And I had really never had anxiety. I had never experienced a panic attack. And so I had my first panic attack. It took a couple days. I could feel the adrenaline coming on.
Mhm.
But by the second day of him being in the hospital after getting out of surgery, I had to go down to the ER
Mm.
because I thought I was having a heart attack. And it was the scariest, scariest time. Thankfully, I was okay. They gave me, some medication to bring me to calm me down where I was able to go home and go to sleep. But that's when, in a nutshell, at that point, my adrenals, my body had said, "You've pushed me enough. I'm done." And at that
Yep.
point, I was pretty much, I didn't know what was going on with my body. I didn't realize all of these years had impacted the fact that I couldn't have children. I didn't realize being underweight and having low body fat and under eating and over exercising. I didn't realize, I should have known. I've been pretty educated when it comes to fitness and health for the majority of my life. But it wasn't until everything came crushing down. I thought I was just cruising along and, I'm looking
Mhm.
good and I don't feel good. I feel like hell.
Mhm.
But I'm looking good, I'm lean, whatever. But yeah,
Yeah.
the inside was like, no, I'm done with you.
Well, and that's a thin does not necessarily equate health from the inside out. And that's one thing that, as a culturistic thing that we agree on is that we will assume that people that are heavy are unhealthy and that people that are thin are not. And that's not true. It's just kind of the way that it's the environment that our bodies have been in, and there's so much to it. So please continue. Yes, this is so good.
Yeah.
Just how you're showcasing the depletion your body can't take it. So it's something called adaptive reserve. When your body doesn't have enough in the tank to cope with the stress load, your body is keeping you alive. It shut you down so that you didn't die.
Yeah. Pretty much, yes.
Yeah.
100%.
And
Uh,
that's exactly what it's designed to do. It's depletion. And so, truly taking a look at things from the stress response, we have to look like that's why the infertility happened for you and me.
mhm.
As a type A person that was dieting or whatever, even though I was losing a lot of weight, you were doing it for bodybuilding, the story is the same. I actually love that you didn't really struggle with your weight and overweight because it showcases that we were doing the same thing at the same time and we ended up with the same result, infertility, tapped out, panic attacks, anxiety ridden, trauma, 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 trauma on the body. We don't think that fitness in some of the ways that we do it can be considered something bad for us. And it's literally like why we have to go back and relearn the way this body works. You have to learn the way that your machine works so that you can work it, so that you can drive it. Like, we learned how to drive a car at some point. Somebody had to teach us. Where did we learn how to run this thing? Where did we learn how to eat? From the media, from our parents, and who taught them? So it's just things that get passed down generationally, which there can be generational traumas, that get passed down as well. So I didn't mean to take that off on a tangent. You and I could talk for hours and hours and days. That's the
Yes.
beauty of this conversation.
Yes, so true. But you're exactly right. And, I just didn't realize it at the time. And I spent all those years on what would be considered like a competitor diet. I didn't
Mhm.
take diet breaks. And those were, if I, knowing what I know now, and for the younger folks that are listening, focus on building muscle, focus on all over wellness, your well being, not being lean 24/7, being a competitor and competitor lean, 12 months out of the year, it's not good.
Comes at a price.
You
Yeah.
need to have a menstrual cycle. That is a signal of health. So it is important. And, it will impact your fertility. It will impact your life and what you're doing in your teens to 20s to 30, it's going to affect your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, your 60s. Do you want to live to 80? I'm so thankful. It's weird to say this, but I'm thankful that that happened.
Mhm.
Um, this is not a knock on any Western medicine doctor because we do need them. They are there to
Absolutely.
save our lives, that is their job. But during that time, I didn't know what was going on with my body. And I saw my primary care. They're running tests. I did have an abnormal EKG. I do have a right branch bundle block. So thankfully, I did have that panic attack to uncover that.
Mhm.
My cardiologist, I'm freed from him. You're good to go. You just need to know you have it and move on. Which that kind of got the stress up again. I'm like, oh my gosh. So since 2018, I have dealt off and on with anxiety. And when you are at a low place, adrenal, hormonally, that's the first thing, especially with perimenopause women, that anxiety creeps up. Then you're not
Absolutely.
sleeping well. It's just a cascade of things that are not fun to experience. Um, but they ran a bazillion tests and they're like, well, we can't there's nothing wrong with you. And I'm like,
Mm.
no, I feel there's something wrong. There is something wrong. I don't feel good. I feel like hell. I don't have energy. I'm exhausted, but I'm still pushing myself because I've got to go to work. I've got a family. Life's still moving. You can't stop. And
That right
finally,
there, I was gonna say, go ahead. I didn't want to interrupt you. I was gonna say that right there is why we don't need to why we don't need a test. Is because we treat the person, not the test. The
yeah.
test is just validation that you have symptoms, but if they don't run the right test, they're not going to validate your symptoms and they can't do anything. Where you're telling me everything I need to know that no, this woman is depleted. She's, you just think about the story and all of the traumas. How are you not? Right? You start asking the questions like that's the process.
Yeah.
So if you're going through that and you're being told that you're normal, but you feel terrible, lead with what you know. Find somebody that's going to listen to you, that's going to tie those dots together and help you understand that not only are you not fine, things are falling apart.
Mhm.
And we have to understand like they stack. So I love that you said that because, we don't just end up with infertility. We don't just end up with rheumatoid arthritis. We don't just end up with multiple sclerosis and Parkinson's disease. That starts way back when. And so we have to figure out we actually just did an exercise of the timeline, your health timeline. What are these significant traumas in your life that stack? One woman came in recently and she had terribly, terribly debilitating symptoms. And she realized that they got a little bit better when she moved. And I said, well, how long did you live in that house? And she said it was 11 years. And sure enough, that's when they moved into that house. And because of that conversation, we discovered that there was mold in that house and that mold exposure that she was exposed to, that they thought they got rid of because there was one little spot that mold exposure is when those symptoms went through the roof, but without going through and kind of taking apart the timeline were we able to figure out like what depleted her over time and what body systems we need to treat and how we need to like build from the ground up with a healthy diet, with sleep, with removing any external stressors, whether it's food or toxins or people, from the environment so that you can give your nervous system a break, because if it doesn't get a break, it's going to shut you down. And it's going to steal from different body systems. That's where genetics comes in. We're like, oh, this is genetic. Oh, this is genetic. Well, no, it's because your genes, which are similar to your family's, were exposed to an environment that was depleting them. It doesn't, so just because Alzheimer's is in my genetics doesn't mean I'm going to end up with that. Like, that's one of my motivators is I want to make sure that my environment, my body, is not exposed to so much stress that it doesn't turn that on for me, right? Where I don't fall apart in that way, where Alzheimer's is a diagnosis that I receive, just like the infertility or whatever. So, yeah, it's really powerful.
Yeah.
We really have to zoom out, really have to zoom out, it might not be a supplement that you need. It's like big picture stuff. Like, what is your body taking in? What is your body living through? I had a similar tragic experience like that. Like, thank you for sharing that, by the way, because when you are put in a traumatic situation where your life is threatened by another human, I will share, this is the first time I've ever shared it, is that I was nearly beaten to my death and then raped afterwards. And I had to go through that alone.
I'm so
I
sorry.
you have PTSD, and our type A, our type A personalities push through. I'm fine. Like, I'm okay. I'm okay. Was it okay? I wasn't okay. And I can say, well, you said thank you, I'm glad that happened. I'm so glad all of these things happened to me. Not glad that that happened to me. Should have never happened to me. I had to admit that I was a victim of something terrible. But I will tell you that if I didn't know how to take care of myself, I would not be standing here. Like from my first near death experience, if I had not learned how to take care of myself, I wouldn't be here for my kids or anything else. And so we've learned a lot about trauma and even unpacking why that situation happened. That situation happened because that person endured so much trauma as a child that there's some sickness in the mind and the depletion. And, you know, you you just have to know where these things come from. And there's a book called When the Body Says No by Gabor Mate. His work is amazing. It's all about, people who have these diagnoses, whether it's Parkinson's disease, multiple sclerosis, and things like that. Like the body will shut you down, and they often have unique characteristics in their personality. They're empathetic, or their voice is silenced in certain ways, where it turns into disease because your immune system is turned down under stress. You ever gotten sick a lot when you're stressed? Your immune system is in your gut. Your gut is the engine that gets all of the nutrition and takes it to the cells. If your all of your body systems cannot get the nutrition that it needs, you're not gonna have the gas to get through it. So it's a perpetual, like, which come first, chicken or the egg scenario. If you're super stressed and then your diet's stressing you out and you don't have the fuel, you run out,
Mhm.
and that's going to present itself in depletion, whether it's depletion of hormones, whether it's depletion of neurotransmitters. So whether it's ADHD, this is your kids, guys. This is, adults. This is, mental illness. This is anxiety and depression. Oftentimes a medication is a patch that can help us get through. But at the end of the day, until we reach the deficiencies that are coming, that's gonna be really hard for the body to get on top of it, and we have to stop it from getting worse. We have to understand that our lifestyle, whether we know it or not, whether we're aware of it or not, is contributing to that. And so we have to do all of the things that we need to. That's why I always tell people, I help people eat right, sleep right, and poop right. Like, if we're not doing those things, which you'd be surprised, most people aren't doing those things well at all. And so when we get down to the basics, it's like literally watching people work miracles in their lives all day long, whether it's weight loss or whatever. We've had tons of people lose over 100 pounds in our thing, but we have to be educated for longevity to understand the way that our machine works so that, this is preventative for what's coming. With us being in our, middle-aged women, we got half of our life to live yet. So, like, if we're noticing like depletion of our hormones and going into menopause and perimenopause and all that stuff, and it's rocky, well, you got to start with the core. We can dial down into vitamins and supplements and tests. Okay, we've got to take a look at the foundation and get an education, and then do that in a place where you get love and support, where people like Rebecca and I, this is just the conversation that we have, where everybody's openly sharing these things. And I like to say, if it's not out, it's in. So if you are not, sharing these things with other people, then you're kind of holding that in to some degree. You're not releasing it so that you can heal from those things. And it's super powerful. It's super powerful to find that connectivity, to know that you're not alone in that someone does understand and is hearing you, that is going to walk that journey with you, rather than saying, hey, take this pill, it's going to be okay, when that's probably not accurate. Like, it might make you feel a little bit better. Like I said, not knocking those things. I do believe that most conventional doctors are kind of stuck in the same system that everybody else is. We only have 5 minutes to take a look at our health, when it should be the only thing that we're focusing on that makes everything better.
Yeah, you're 100% right. So after, that this is the first time that I've opened up about that situation, the large one, on any open platform. There's only a handful of people that know that, and most of them are my immediate family
Yeah,
members.
same.
But yeah, and
It was
thank
the
you for
place to do
sharing.
it. Well, we're sisters in that, because just thank you for being and having that courage, because I've always seen that work to come back 10x, 100x, 1000x, because people will just be compelled to reach out. they'll be compelled to share their story, and that means that they're gonna be received. So when it comes back to that trauma of being abandoned or, not being heard, like we said, like going to the doctors and not being heard, or going to, a parent or a loved one, and that it's an abandonment trauma, like, it's an emotional trauma on the body. There's lots of therapies and modalities. So we're diving deep into EMDR therapy, where, the whole reset is kind of shifting to, not only trauma, but addiction recovery. We deal with food addiction. So we really, ladies and men, if you feel like you're addicted to food and sugar or whatever, know that you're not alone. And like it's a mechanism in the body. You need to understand that we're medicating these things. And when you have some education and you have some tools to get through it, it can get a whole lot better. You're talking, this is a girl who used to pull chocolate cake out of the garbage can. I was addicted to food. But a lot of it was biochemically the toxins that were in my body driving that, my brain. It wasn't my fault. I didn't fail, which is what we think. Also a trauma that you're, doing to yourself. You're beating yourself up for not being able to figure it out. And so when you can give yourself that grace and give your body and your nervous system the grace, give it a break, give it some food, give it some love, give it some connection. Wow, you lighten the load
Yeah.
and things get so much better.
Yes, yes. I can attest to all that because I since 2018, I've done all of those things that you mentioned, and therapy was a major part of that. I went through EMDR treatment after working with a therapist for a year, so we didn't just jump into that. But folks that, are battling with PTSD or near death situations, EMDR is a very helpful tool. I can still talk about the situations that occurred in my life. I can still see it, but it doesn't have the same con- connection or impact
Yep,
on my body that it once did prior to the treatment. So I will say that it worked for me. It was a godsend. That counselor I worked with
same.
was retired, but you're right, it does go hand in hand. I had to get to the root cause and unpack all of this trauma that I have experienced throughout my life. It wasn't just, hey, Rebecca, you need to increase your calories and feed up and you need to rest. It wasn't
Right.
just that. It was, I had to get to the bottom of what was driving me to do these drastic things of dieting and or under eating and over
Mhm.
exercising. What was causing that? Where was that coming from? And really
Yeah.
dive in and fix that. And, that's what I love about Miranda's approach. And when I met her and she said, initially, I don't do testing. And she said, I work with my clients and allow them that space to unpack. And that really resonated with me because she hit the nail on the head. If you're not unpacking that, it doesn't matter if you're doing all the other things right. Unfortunately, you're not going to heal 100%. So I love
Mhm.
that. We've covered a lot today.
Yes, a
Miranda,
lot.
yes. Is there anything that you'd like to leave the audience with?
Well, first of all, I want you to follow what your intuition is telling you about your body and your health. And what my mission is to give people the resources. So when we started talking about EMDR or about your diet, about exercise and health, we want to be the one-stop shop for all of that. So that is the goal of myself and my team, to be, not only we do a lot of that in-house, and the place to be the unpacking, number 1. Like, we're gonna sit with you. My program's a year long. We're gonna do some heavy lifting. We're friends, we're family. Like, I work with people all over the country. Zoom is a miracle, so we have that connection. We worked with over 1,300 people in the last 5 years, to help them just truly work miracles in their life. But number 1, like, reach out. There is no shame in saying that you need help, that we want to be the place that we can connect you to whatever recovery modality. Because I will tell you, ladies, if you have 30 pounds that keeps coming back on, you need to be in some kind of a recovery. This is not you. I just need the right meal plan. I just need to get my butt back to the gym. That's not it. There's something more, and we're going to help you have the tools and break that down. And if it's not us in house and we're bringing more and more modalities in, we will connect you. And so I offer a free phone call with everybody. So if you want to have that conversation, like, reach out, don't suffer in silence. We tend to think that silence is safety, and that's not true. Silence is isolating. Silence is lonely. Silence is suffocating. But when you can connect like the way Rebecca and I did over one conversation got us to this today. Like it was just truly God that connected us through other people that got us to this amazing conversation. And so I know that we know why we're doing this is because this is going to bless somebody so that you have resources and you know who to reach out to so that you can be received. And if it's not us that are helping you, then we are committed. We're not just going to hear what you've shared and just be like, forgot that we hear that. No, it is like the mission of my heart to help you feel heard, comforted, and led in the right direction, whether it's me, a friend of mine. I know practitioners all over the country work on the best of functional medicine. I actually coach other functional medicine practitioners, chiropractors, and naturopaths all over the world. So I have an amazing network of people that can help in many, 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 many modalities. So it's all about, just being like, being the branch to help you get to the step that you need to take. And it's one step at a time. And so truly, it is a podcast like this that saved my life. And if that's you or for somebody that's like, don't hesitate in reaching out to us because it is our desire that you're not suffering by yourself and that we can get you to the help that you need and that you deserve that. You get to get help for it. It's okay. It's better to do it with somebody that cares about you than to try to figure it out by yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And I do that just brought up one other thing. If you want something to change, change has to happen. So,
Yes.
yeah, let that
Yes.
marinate for a minute.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And we help you make that change because mindset is a good portion of that. And being afraid to fail is a barrier. And we actually put a results guarantee on our program because when you're ready, we will give you the tools that work. We'll show you over and over again that they work, but what you need is somebody to hold your hand, hold you accountable, and it doesn't matter how long it takes. The journey is one that you take one step at a time, and everybody's journey is individual to them. And we help you understand that too, what your body's capable of doing so that you can give yourself some grace and get where you need to go because, healing is possible. You're not a diagnosis. You're not the pills that you need to take. A lot of that is reversible in days and weeks. Like you'd be surprised how close so much better can feel. And it's changed my life dramatically. It's blessed my life dramatically. And it's like a life preserver. If I know someone's drowning, I gotta throw it out and I gotta hope that somebody's gonna grab hold. It's my responsibility to do that, but it's also my privilege and honor to do that, and that is truly the way that I see that, and being a part of somebody else's health journey, just as the people that helped me. We have a family of people. I call them my rescue team, Lord's rescue team, who rescued me from a terrible, terribly traumatic situation. And it isn't without that help and faith that we are able to be here today. And so we just want this conversation to bless you. But it starts by you taking that step for yourself.
Yes, absolutely. Those of you listening, we'd love to hear your thoughts and experience on these topics. Miranda, if you'd like to share with the audience how they can connect with you.
Absolutely. So my website is resetwithmiranda.com. And if you want to book a call, there is a button there that says apply now. And it'll ask you to fill out just a form that tells me a little bit about your journey so that we can make the most of our conversation. So I have a little bit of, information and you schedule a time and we'll chat. You can also email me. It's Miranda@resetwithmiranda.com. And then you can find me on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook under Reset with Miranda and all of those things too, or my name, Miranda Summer. And I'm a real person. We like to say that the reset is real people eating real food with real results because it's real. It's about as real as it can get. But that's the beautiful piece is when you are doing it with other people just like you.
Awesome. Details of how to contact Miranda will be in the show notes. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast for more insightful discussions. Thank you for joining us on Balance and Bottom Lines with Rebecca. Remember, the balance between personal well-being and professional success is key. Stay tuned for our next episode. Until then, keep striving for excellence in both your personal and professional life. Miranda, thank you so much.
What an honor. Thank you so much, Rebecca.